Oh,
And I literally saw a Facebook event for a comedy open mic. And I said, you know what? I could do that. Like 5 minutes, attention from strangers. Like, let's do it. I'd done.
hello, and welcome back to my Courage, Confidence, and Connections podcast. All you fans, thanks for joining me. And my guest today is Katy Ipock from here in the local area. She is a local comedian. We'll get that right. I'm Janicedebocoaching, your host, as you know. I always show up with some new face and a beautiful face with lots of smiles. I'm sure we'll have some good laughs. We can't have a podcast with a comedian without laughing, right, Katy?
Well, that would be the hope.
Okay, I know, really. Well, what we're going to do is learn a little bit about you and your past, and then, how you got into what you're doing now. So tell our audience a little bit about Katy right now, because I know you have a family and you live in Bend.
Absolutely. So my name is Katy Ipock. I turned 40 last year. I am a third generation Bendite, which is a rarity.
Mhm.
My great, no, just one great grandmother actually moved to Bend in one of the last wagon trains. Yeah.
Wow.
My grandmother went to Bend High School when it was still downtown. The Bend Boys and Girls Club used to be Bend High's gym. There's
Oh,
actually a pool that's been covered that used to be Bend High's pool. The high school used to actually have a full-size pool. I wish that still would have been a thing.
yeah.
Uh, I've been married for almost 17 years. He's a second generation graduate of Bend High. I have a 16-year-old son. Don't do the math. Um, he is he is autistic, so we are a special needs family, which is actually a phenomenal journey. Uh, it's just different. I like to say that I don't have the struggles that neurotypical parents have. I've never stepped on a Lego. I've never had to do a sleepover. I don't have to do sports. I've never had to do like sports trips. My weekends are not filled with any of that stuff. And the PTA never bothers me. Uh, no school has ever called me and asked me to volunteer for a thing. So like it's not bad. We also get a special school schedule and we've never had to get up early. So like it's not all bad.
Yeah.
Um, my comedy birthday is January 6th, 2016.
Oh,
Obviously, that was not as weird of a day back then. Um,
yeah.
and I started doing comedy because I am a um, lover of attention. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and so I was going months without leaving home.
Oh,
And I literally saw a Facebook event for a comedy open mic. And I said, you know what? I could do that. Like 5 minutes, attention from strangers, like let's do it. I'd done speech team in high school. I was literally just doing it to get out of the house, be seen by strangers, do something cool just once. Ended up getting 2 paid gigs off my first open mic and spent the first year just saying yes um, to every opportunity. And then I've kind of just kept doing it.
wow. That's almost like a well, not like Marvelous Ms. Maisel, totally, but is an uh
Yep.
accidental comedian.
Yeah, no, I was definitely more sober
Yeah, that was
than
a
I was her first time. And not as angry, but the rest of it
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
close.
Yeah, that's such a great show. I've watched it several times over, and yeah, she's really good. And so are you. So tell our audience a little bit about the style of your comedy, and what you like to focus on. Having a special needs child, it makes it very different for you, so you can't make fun of your kids. Um, but what style do you focus on, and how do you get your content?
So my style is evolving, and they say it takes 10 years to find your voice, and I'm just now hitting 10 years, and I'm finding that my writing is starting to change. When I first started comedy, it was wow, it was a lot more storytelling.
Okay.
Everything was a little bit longer, and I noticed in the last year or so, all of my setups and my punchlines were getting a lot shorter. It was getting a little bit more one-liner. It's getting quicker, which a lot of things are now. I think a lot of short form content is making us all do things quicker.
Hmm.
You know, attention spans are getting shorter.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Um, but my content has stayed about the same. I focus a lot on body positivity.
Okay.
Um, and if I'm honest, sex positivity. And I think as I get older, it tends to skew into, I don't know if this is a phrase, but age positivity with those things.
Good.
Idea that, I'm 40, but I can still enjoy the same things I did when I was 20, and I can still do the same things I did when I was 20. Um, and as for parenting, yeah, I don't write as much about my parenting journey as I probably would if I had a neurotypical kid. But I think I would use the same lens in a sense that I'm always, because there's definitely things that are extremely humorous about our life. But I always think about if my son were to see this bit on video, and if he were able to understand it, would he find this funny?
Good.
Or would he be embarrassed?
Oh,
And although it's not always easy to tell what he has understanding and humor about, there are some things that I see him doing for comedic effect. Um, he is what we call a scripter, which is he doesn't have a lot of functional communication, but he'll repeat phrases over and over. And there are some phrases that he has used, and you can tell he uses them because he knows
mm.
it gets reactions from people.
Oh,
So I take that on stage because I know he's doing it to be funny. And so I think if he were able to understand, he would be okay with it. So, I'm able to take that on stage and use that to kind of talk to the audience about being a special needs mom and what that journey looks like, and able to kind of use that moment as comedy should be, shining bright lights into dark corners and helping
um,
talk about things that aren't always talked about, and kind of, showing that, special needs parenting isn't all the horrible darkness that everyone that it seems to be shown, that there is humor and there is levity. But yeah, I definitely don't talk about that as much. My marriage comes up now and then. It's kind of the same thing. My husband is my co-writer a lot of times.
really? Okay.
Um, we'll send texts back and forth. So I'll get a text from work. Will he be like, "Is this funny?" Um, I've had some of his friends and coworkers come to shows and then go to him the next day and be like, "Did you know your wife says this about you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I wrote that."
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So, there's definitely some of that in there, which sometimes I am surprised by the reaction from audiences when I say I've been married for 15, 16 years. Um, the longer we're married, the more surprise I get from audiences.
Hmm.
Um, and so being able to kind of talk about that longevity and, what changes about that, and, how, when you've been with somebody for 17 years, nothing surprises you anymore. Like
Boy, that's true.
um and then now that I'm starting to do more shows outside of Bend, I talk about that a little bit. In the end, I think all comedians, in a way, we look at the world and then report what we see back. So the more I travel, the more I will report that back.
Yeah.
And I write about how the traffic in Portland is foreign to me because I've lived in Bend all my life. So I don't understand a lot of interstates and because that's hasn't been a thing in Bend. So as I experience more, I'll report back on more.
Well, that's really cool. And so how far and wide do you travel to do your shows?
So far, I guess I have not traveled super far and wide. I've been able to go to California twice for festivals. I
Oh,
did a festival in San Francisco 2 years ago, and then last year I was in Eureka for the Savage Henry Comedy Festival, which is, I do believe, invite only. So you
okay.
don't really submit, but you get headhunted, requested.
Oh,
I go to Portland quite a bit. I've done some Southern Oregon stuff. My goal this year is to get to Seattle in some way, shape, or form, even if I just have to go up there to open mic for a week. But my goal is to start kind of opening up Washington this year.
cool. Well, I have a contact that might help. He's a DJ and he's all over that area.
Nice.
So he might, I'll connect you guys. He's been on my podcast 3 times. So
Nice.
I know he specializes in weddings now, but I think you guys would have a good chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, so who is your favorite well-known comedian or comedian?
Everyone asks me that question, and this is when I have to admit the horrible faux pas of I was not a huge fan of stand-up before I started doing it.
Oh, wow.
And I don't watch a lot of it now, mostly out of fear that I'll accidentally write somebody else's material.
Oh, gotcha.
Like if I'm watching somebody else's special, it might accidentally lodge in my brain.
Hmm.
I will say, like anybody else in the 2010s, I was watching some of Amy Schumer and I was a real fan of Amy Schumer. And now that I've done comedy for a while, um, I'm not as huge of a fan of her style. Um, but all styles of comedy are valid. I really loved Ali Wong's first couple specials. I
Oh.
think she is an amazing example of observational comedy. Definitely an example of observing the world and reporting it back,
Hmm.
and shining a light on, especially women and moms and wives and what that looks like. So loved her stuff. But as a kid, the one kind of thing of comedy that came into our house when I was a kid was the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. So, and Bill Engvall's album, I forget what it was called, but it had Dorkfish on it, the chunk Dorkfish. If you've never heard Dorkfish, go listen to Dorkfish.
Okay.
Um, but it that my family would listen to in the car. So that has always had a little bit of a spot for me as well.
Very cool. I know, we all know the well-known Robin Williams and people like that.
Oh yeah.
Recently, I've enjoyed watching Leanne. Now, she's a character.
Hmm.
I'm from the South, so I relate to a lot of that, but she hits a lot of points about women and our bodies too. So that's always a good. I love that you talk about our bodies and the body humor and the accepting ourselves, and then of course the sex humor. Everybody goes there, but yeah, the age thing I think will be a very popular topic because the baby boomers are aging, and it's
Yep.
a that's a big crowd.
Well, and body positivity, it's amazing. In the 10 years I've done comedy, when I started doing comedy, body positivity was just coming into mainstream.
Mhm.
And then I feel like it had kind of lost ground just because everyone had kind of come to terms with it. We had all kind of come there. And now with the Ozempic
Oh.
era, you're starting to see a real backslide in connecting morality with body composition again. So you're starting to see a lot more body shaming and a lot more negativity towards different body types. So you're starting to see the body positivity conversation coming back.
Yeah.
Um, And so I am excited to continue that conversation. And the thing that surprises me most when I bring that material is when I'm discussing that, and it's always talking about my own body, um, just labeling myself as fat, which is just a descriptor. It's not a moral judgment. It is not an ethical concern. It's literally in the dictionary. It's just a descriptor.
It's a word.
But just by using that word, I have people come up to me after a show and say, "Why are you so mean to yourself?"
Hmm.
And it's always like, "Why do you think that's mean? Like, why is acknowledging what I look like and if they listen to the entirety of the material, I'm not saying anything negative about myself at all. If they actually paid attention
Yeah.
and really dug into what was being said, I'm actually saying some very nice and wonderful things about myself. But because I'm acknowledging the outward appearance of my body composition, they think it's negative. And that's where a lot of this internalized body shame comes out and people use it against other people. That's where the
Mhm.
negativity towards other people comes from, is because of your own internalized shame.
Yep. And that's true about the word aging too.
Yeah.
The word old and yeah, and there's just a lot of shaming around that. Uh,
Oh
I
yeah.
Yeah, I worked in a retirement home for 5 years in North Carolina, and I tell you what, some of those people were more active than half the Gen X people, and better attitudes and busier. It's crazy, but
Hmm.
they taught me a lot. But the aging thing, I tell you what, until you hit it, you don't get it. You know, you when you hit 60, you realize, oh, that's what this is about. And I mean, really, it's when I was in my 20s, I didn't know, I thought 55 was old, and I thought, well, I'll never live to be 55. That's really old. Then you hit that number and go, oh, I'm here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but the word old and the word fat, we're trying to put people in boxes and make them what they look like, and that just really it's a huge issue in our culture. It
Yeah.
really is. Not accepting people for face value and for being a human being first.
Yep. And all of it, the the negative connotations and the negative things that people put on other people is always a reflection of the shame inside themselves. And when you deconstruct that internal shame, only then can you stop
Hmm.
putting it on other people. Um, I wasn't able to really embrace body positivity until I deconstructed my own internal shame. That was a journey in itself.
It
Um,
it is. Yeah. Yeah. So, since the name of my podcast is Courage, Confidence, and Connections, what I want to find out is, where has courage really been impactful in your life? Where can you look back when we're in the middle of something, we don't see the courageous side of it? I guarantee you that. I've lived too much to not believe that. But in your life, where can you look back and see that, because dealing with a child with autism, it takes courage anyway. But where do you have a specific story that you can share about courage in your life, or confidence? And we know about connections because we're sitting here, we're connected.
it's so Courage is such an interesting lens
Hmm.
because I think so many things that I do and I have done, people would label as courage,
Hmm.
but I would label as missing internal that internal guide in your brain that says you shouldn't do that thing.
Oh
Or
my,
that
you're
you
preaching to the choir here.
yeah.
Really.
And that's the when you talk about like the fear of public speaking, what the fear of public speaking is really is internally is that subconscious desire to not be kicked out of the group and therefore eaten by the lion at night. That's why the fear of public speaking is so strong, because the people that got ostracized by the group weren't able to sleep by the fire at night and
Oh,
therefore got eaten by the predators. So
oh,
being accepted by your group is evolutionarily required. And so that's why the fear of public speaking is so strong. So
wow.
those of us that don't have that are really just missing an evolutionarily key that, you know, millennia or whatever ago would have gotten us eaten by a lion.
Mm,
It's not really a good thing. It's not. Um, so it's hard for me to say it took courage
mhm,
to do stand-up comedy. It took courage to, get up in front of at times hundreds of people looking, a different way. But I do think what started it all might have taken courage, and that was trying line dancing for the very first time. And that was before I had done a lot of my deconstruction.
mhm.
And I had started a Facebook group called Central Oregon Girlfriends. This
Oh,
was a long time ago, like
uh,
15 years ago. Jesus.
oh, wow.
Um, and so we would, it was all people looking to make friends, and then we would kind of plan places to go, and we went to see the country artist that sings Strawberry Wine. I forget her name, but she was playing at Mavericks,
Oh,
which it's called the Cross-Eyed Cricket now. And there was a line dance lesson before. I had never line danced. I had taken dance lessons when I was like 10, but that was it. And so they're like, let's take the line dance lesson. Let's take the line dance lesson. And I was so scared because I am, always have been, maybe always will be, looked away that anytime I participated in any sort of physical activity would be ridiculed in some way,
mm,
if not in a loud way, in a quiet way. It's just the way society has always been.
yeah.
That's why people take videos in gyms. That's why people comment on videos on the internet. It's just what it is. And so I didn't want to at first, but peer pressure is peer pressure. And finally I was like, okay, fine. And so getting on that dance floor was maybe one of the scariest things I had done in a very long time.
Interesting.
And I was so afraid of what everyone around me was thinking and
Mm,
what they were thinking of me. And every time I moved and I felt parts of my body jiggle that don't jiggle on other people.
yeah,
Um,
I get it.
right? Yeah. And eventually, as with any movement, any body movement, you will eventually just be able to kind of tune into it. And I fell in love with it. I
Ooh,
fell in love with line dancing and I loved it so much. And it literally changed the entire trajectory of my life. Line dancing changed everything. So I started going to lessons. I went to lessons 3 nights a week.
wow.
I started, yeah, no, that was, yeah, it was a big thing.
Mm,
Um, and it took I had to fight a lot to do it. Um, and it was scary, but I loved it. And I'm so glad I took the courage to do it.
congratulations. That is great because you had to get out of the house, like you said, with your being at home all the time with your son. And I've interviewed quite a few people, um, some with autistic children and the special needs situation, um, which reminds me there's still one that never got back on my schedule. But but I know the battle. I've never experienced that battle except I was guardian for my adult nephew for 5 years who has special needs and lives in a group home. But I didn't live with him, and I don't think I could have. So it takes a special caliber of person, parent or otherwise, to help those that aren't like us. Now, from what I've heard, autistic people are brilliant in different ways. And there was a show that Kiefer Sutherland did called I forget the name of it. Touch, that was the name of it. And his son never spoke. He was all, really not high functioning autistic. He couldn't speak, but he related by numbers and he was brilliant. So it's amazing that some people are that have dis what we call disabilities. They have different abilities that we can't even grasp. We can't even begin to comprehend.
Right.
Yep, it's amazing. And on that journey, would you have any words of wisdom for moms or dads that are in that situation? Something you can share that might be encouraging them to, because you've made some bold steps. There's no question about it. So, what kind of advice would you give those others?
So the first thing I would say is do not measure or compare your child to anyone else. One person on the spectrum is one person on the spectrum. They call it a spectrum for a reason. Um,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, one of the reasons I stopped going to Spectrum mom meetups and Spectrum parent meetups is there was still the comparison game. And it was either a comparison game of whose child was the worst off or whose child was still the all-star.
Oh,
And and it was like I I don't want to wallow and I also I don't want to play the comparison game. There's no part of my life where I enjoy playing the comparison game.
mm-mm.
So that's my first thing. Don't compare to your child anyone. And outside of doctor's appointments and when you're doing school meetings, stop caring about milestones
Mm,
that neurotypical children meet. Your child will speak if they're supposed to speak when they're supposed to speak. They'll walk when they're supposed to walk, how they're supposed to walk. Um, and then there's so much pressure around forcing our children to fit into the world. There's so many therapeutic modalities like ABA therapy, and all of them are around forcing our children to fit into the world.
right.
And a lot of that, we kind of, I mean, even neurotypical parents have to try to mold their children to fit into the world. I do everything I can in every way I can to make the world fit my son.
Good. I like that.
Yeah, like, and when it comes to his home is his world fits him. We we have had two queen size mattresses in our living room for over a decade now.
Wow.
He is a sensory seeker and especially for large movement. And so he has always wanted to jump. He has always, and so I'm not going to fight that. He wants that input in his joints. We're going to make it safe for him to do so.
Nice.
Um, he likes to throw rocks into rivers.
Oh,
He likes to do that. So we're going to figure out a way to make sure he can do that safely.
good.
He loves to swim. Swimming is one of the few things that he will do and he will stop scripting.
Oh,
It's beautiful and he loves it and he can do it for hours. So we will do everything we can. That's why we go to the lake as often as we do in the summer. We get him as much of that as we can. We do everything we can to mold our world around him. And you know what? It is somewhat of a privileged thing to say. And I say as much as you can, you know, don't, don't feel like if going beyond that, if you're not able to do everything that you're a bad parent, do what you can. But
yeah.
what it boils down to is don't feel like outside of your home, you still have to push your child to be changed to fit the world.
Yeah.
Let your, I really think when it comes to the home, we should let our children decompress and unmask and be who they are. You know, it's even neurotypical kids, you know, they go to school, they have to really behave at school. They really have to pay attention in school. They really have to do the things. But when they come home, they get to take their backpacks off. They get to relax a little bit. Even as adults,
Yeah.
we go to work. We really have to like whatever. And then we come home, we take our hair off, we take our bra off, and we get to chill. We
Yeah.
have let your needs kids do the same thing. Let home be their sanctuary. Let home be where they can unmask. Let home be where they stim, whatever stim that is. And yes, it might be annoying hearing them say the same word 1,000 times, but that's their thing. Let them have their thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
only going to be their thing for so long. Like,
That's great advice because we do try to fit, and I don't have kids, but I'm around enough parents, and I know from my own growing up experience, we try to put people and kids even in boxes. And I grew up pretending. I don't know why I'm not an actress, but I am on, here. So, yeah, so I grew up pretending for reasons that I don't need to go into. But um, we do enough of that, and we have to learn to be ourselves. I watched a movie this week, and I'll have to look up the name of it and send it to you. But in the end, it was about an actor. Oh, I think it was Jay Kelly. I think it was a movie Jay Kelly with George Clooney. And it was the hardest question you'll ever answer. The hardest part you'll ever play is being yourself. And isn't that the truth? Do we
absolutely.
do we even know how to just be ourselves? Or
Yep.
do we even know who we are to be ourselves? And man, that just spoke really loudly to me. And let the kids be themselves. I mean, there are certain things they have to learn and do, but no matter what if they're quote normal or what is it? They have special abilities.
Yeah.
You know, let them be themselves. And I can say for my nephews, he's gotten a lot of help in that area. He's living in a group home, but he's adapted well and they let him be himself. So that's so important. And we think we're all high and mighty sometimes, like I'm normal. Well, we don't even have a gauge for normal, let me tell you.
That's
What's normal? And I know we're keeping it clean, but I have to ask as we wrap this up for a little bit of some comedy so we can end the show on a funny note because we're on a pretty heavy subject.
oh,
I might put you on the
but
spot.
clean. Oh.
Oh, I know, I know. I don't want to get censored.
And I'm not, oh man. And I'm so in mom brain. I'm trying to even think
Oh,
of material. Um, just words get censored, right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they
So,
don't really, this is my show, but I like to keep it, you know.
yeah. So every time for our anniversary, my husband and I always talk about getting like a cabin out in the woods because we're parents. We can only enjoy adult times when we're like 3 counties away from our kids.
Three counties away. Oh,
And my friends were like, you should get silk sheets for your cabin. And obviously, they've never had adult time on silk sheets because my husband on silk sheets looks like a baby deer trying to walk across a frozen lake.
oh my God. That's good. Yeah, silk sheets are not all they're cracked up.
No, no, they're
Oh,
not. They're the worst.
talk about sliding. Woo. Yeah.
No traction whatsoever.
No, no.
Whoever thought those were romantic had not never been romantic with anyone.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And then another funny scenario would be a waterbed. Yeah, let me tell you. Yeah.
I don't know how any babies were born in the 80s. I don't.
No, isn't that the truth? The I mean, water, and I've been on a waterbed. I'm like, why do people like these things? I have no idea. I can't say I would be thrilled about that, but I love that analogy of the baby deer trying to walk on ice. Yep. That's a pretty good image.
The baby deer was my husband's contribution.
Oh, tell
I
him.
was sit,
Very good.
I was sitting there, I was thinking about, we were laughing about silk sheets, and we were literally laughing about how he couldn't get traction on silk sheets one time. And I was like, what would that look like? And well, we both come from hunting families. And he was like, it's like a baby deer. And I was like, oh my God, on a frozen lake. And then we both started laughing, and then that punchline lives forever.
Yeah, I love it. That is great. Thank you for sharing. And so I like to keep this, between 30 and 40 minutes, and I think we're right at that mark. Any final parting words or humor that you'd like to share before we say adios?
Uh, no, but you can always find everything me at katyipock.com, including the Sentient Object Romance books I write, if you're into things that are not at all family friendly or clean.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, there's a place for that. There's a place, and I take it you've got a booking link on your site.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll have all that information at the end of the broadcast, so our audience can reach out to you and get you on their event, and we'll get you hooked up with someone in Seattle. Seattle, if you're listening, give her a call.
I'd love to go to Seattle.
I know, we'll get you there, girl. Thank you so much
Of
for
course.
this has been a blast. I mean, you made my day, that's for sure.
That's what I do.
I know you're a delight. So we're going to sign off for now and just I will keep you on camera for a minute after. But
Mhm.
for now, we're going to let's see this new Zoom. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.